always very jockey. I grew up in a very jockey house. They're very disappointed. Very, very disappointed. We don't like dress the same or read the same shit or think the same things or speak or any of that. But many years ago, when my dad really thought that me and my brother could be football players. I don't know what we did that made him think that. I just was like any young person, I wanted to please my father, so I tried to play, and my brother was pretty good, and I was pretty not good, but by the time I was a junior at Beaverton High School, I was on the varsity football team, and I'm not saying that I played a lot or anything, but I was on the team. Most people I would hope that go to folk shows weren't on the team, so if you weren't, let me just explain it real quick the best way that I understood it as it was happening to me. If you join the football team, this means that you and say 40 other kids from your school are going to get together every day for about 2 or 3 hours for a good 5 or 6 months, and you're going to take off the comfortable clothes that you wore to school, and you're going to put on ridiculously uncomfortable clothes, and then you're going to go outside with all these other guys and run into and away from each other, all in relationship to the movement of this ball, the whole time consistently being yelled at by adults, right? Now, my dad told me I was representing my district. I didn't even know I was from a fucking district, and now it was up for grabs, and I was gonna win it in this fucking uncomfortable outfit. Why can't you win it, Dad? Or why can't you and the guys that give a shit win it? We want to chase chicks and shit, and these outfits, you can't chase chicks in these fucking outfits. But, nevertheless, you know, they said if it went well at district, you win district, you go to state, some shit, I don't know. Maybe there's a trophy involved. I always thought sports were easy. I never saw the big fucking deal about it. But anyway, you know, so one of the things that I always thought was most fascinating about this football thing was you do it every day. Sometimes you do it with other kids. It's at a different school, or sometimes the parents come and they keep track of it. But it's the same thing, the whole fuck. It's just running into each other, you know? And one thing that I remember we did in practice that always bothered the shit out of me was there's this thing, I don't know if you might remember it from the field in your own high school, there's this thing they call the sled. It's got like these 6 pads, and then a place for an adult to stand behind those pads. And the kids line up in 6 lines. They line up for the opportunity to push this fucking thing. All while this guy standing on the platform behind it is yelling and encouraging them to do it even harder than they already are. No matter how hard they're doing it, this guy yells at them to do it harder. And that's the deal. You wait in line to do it. So one day, and I look back on this and laugh, I was waiting in line to push something. Never again. And I looked up across the field, and I saw a bunch of different kids standing around in a group, except for they had the same shit on that they wore to school. And they had girls over there with them. And so I asked this guy that was in line ahead of me, I said, well, what are those guys? What's that? And he said, well, those are the burnouts, man. And I said, what's a burnout? He said, well, they hang out over there in the smoke pit. I said, what's the smoke pit? He said, well, that's where the burnouts hang out. I didn't know any more than I started. So I went to the coach, and I'll never forget it. I said, Coach, what's a burnout from the smoke pit? And I just remember there was this light of recognition that went off in his face, and he looked at me and went, oh, Snyder, boy, I would hate to see you become a burnout from the smoke pit.
Yeah! That'd be bad! That would be real bad!
What's wrong with him, you know? He said, well, look at him. They look like a bunch of dirty sheep standing around in a field doing nothing. So I thought, well, nobody wants to be that. So I went about my life, avoided those guys. One day I'm in the cafeteria. There's no place else to sit except for next to this guy that I clearly recognize as a burnout from the smoke pit. I sit down next to him. He seems just as nice as anybody else I've ever talked to at the damn school. And then he says to me, hey, Snyder, have you ever tried psychedelic mushrooms before? And I was like, no, I haven't. What's that? He goes, you want to try them? Sure, shit, yeah, I'll try some. So he gives me a bunch of them, and I eat them. And about a half hour later, I knew there was no fucking way that I was going to be able to go to football practice after school. So instead, I went with my new friend to the smoke pit. And it was the first time I had ever seen the life that had been planned for me from a distance.
Yeah!
There they but they looked like they could easily be described as dirty sheep standing around in a field doing nothing, too. And just as I was taking that information in, I looked up and I saw that the goalpost had become candles that were lit. And I knew that that wasn't something that happened most of the time. And then as I was checking that out, they turned into Roman candles or up in the sky. And I thought, now that is fucking killer. And then I looked over at my friends. They were lined up to push that sled, only the sled pad had morphed into Fred G. Sanford from the hit Situation television. And who would make that up? It was Fred Sanford holding his chest like it was the big one. And these kids were pushing him. And my mind, and it's all kind of tracking and weird, too. And then I noticed that the Fred Sanford character morphs into what I think is Jesus, you know? And I thought it was sacrilegious. And they're pushing it. And I'm going, oh, don't push him, man. He's going to hook you up. Or, you know, then it morphed into another guy that was not Jesus, but had a beard and a robe and all that shit. Looked like maybe one of them cats that had hung with Jesus in the day or something. And I was watching him. I wasn't trying to make eye contact with him, but then we did. And he said to me, hey man, do you have 2 10s for a 5 or 2 quarters for a nickel? And as I was thinking about that, he said, and on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say was your favorite color of alphabet? And I knew in that moment that I was never going to ever go back to football practice again or any other kind of fucking practice again for as long as I was going to be alive. And while to this day I still follow Coach Boyer and the mighty Beavers and Beavers because I think this could be the year that we win district. And more importantly, friends and neighbors, we got the coolest goalposts in the whole fucking state. Nobody will argue that. And that, my friends, is the touching story of how I went from the scoreboard watching jock that my father was hoping for and became the peace-loving, pot-smoking, porn-watching, lazy-ass hippie that stands in front of you with very evil. Conservative Christian, right-wing Republican, straight white American male. Soul-saving, flag-waving, rush-loving, lamp-paving, person of friends to the quail. Shirt-tucking, frat-housing, keg-tapping, back-slapping, hater of hippies like me. Tree-hugging, peace-loving, pot-smoking, porn-watching, lazy-ass hippies like me. Tree-hugging, peace-loving, barefoot and folk singing, widespread panic-digging hippies like me. Skin color blinded, conspiracy-minded protesters of corporate greed. We who have nothing and most likely will till we all end up locked up in jail. By conservative Christian, right-wing Republican, straight white American made. Diamonds and dogs, boys and girls, about living together in 2 separate worlds, following leaders up mountains of shame, looking for someone to blame. I know who I like to be. Conservative Christian, right-wing Republican, straight white American made. Gay passion, black fear, and war fighting, tree killing, legion of leaders say. By diligently working so hard to keep the free reins of this democracy. From tree-hugging, peace-loving, pot-smoking, porn-watching,